Hello, this is Daryl Ehrlich, and this is Stories of Honor. And today I am honored to have in studio with us Chancellor Dan Edelman. He is the Chancellor of Montana State University Billings and a veteran himself. And I want to thank you for coming in and talking to me today.
You're welcome, Daryl.
Thanks. So let's talk. I always begin at the beginning because that's where'd you grow up? Tell me about your life because I know it wasn't in Montana, correct?
Correct. I grew up in Chicago,
Okay.
actually a southern suburb of Chicago. I'm a first generation college graduate as well. Had a family of four,
Okay.
plus my parents, so a total family of six. We lived with modest means, and Dad was a cop for a while, but he couldn't afford it on a salary to support a family of six, so I ended up working in a factory in order to supply for us to make ends meet.
It's hard to imagine that a police officer, it was more lucrative to go into a factory, but that was the truth, right?
That's the truth. But I was happier though, because I remember my dad going off to work, and every day I was worried that he wouldn't come home. It was during the bad times. He also worked the '68 convention downtown in
Right.
downtown Chicago, and so I was kind of glad that he left the police force.
Yeah. Yeah. So, growing up, did you come from a military family? Did you have military in your background?
No, had a lot of John Wayne movies in my background.
Okay.
We were pretty patriotic. I did have some uncles that served, uh, but I also had I call him my brother. He worked for my dad for a long time, and he went to Vietnam, and I looked up to him quite a bit.
Right.
So
How did it come about that you decided to give part of your life to the military?
Well, I knew early on I wanted to join the military. I wanted to serve. I also needed a way to finance my college education. We didn't have the means to put me through school. So, was the day after I turned 17, I was down at the recruiter station and making arrangements for the physical, and my mom and dad did sign me away, and I enlisted in the delayed entry program, and I was still a senior in school, so I was all set and getting ready to go in the army.
Okay. So, did your parents have any hesitation or apprehension about that?
I think my mom was happy to get rid of me. My dad wasn't so happy to get rid of me, but
Yeah.
I was trouble when I was a kid.
Yeah. Is South Side of Chicago tough?
It was a tough time, tough area.
Okay.
Yeah,
Was it now Vietnam? Was it still going on when you were 17? Or give me an idea of when
it
that.
had just ended,
Right.
and but there was still a lot of talk about Vietnam and the veterans and things like that.
Did it worry you going into the army? I mean, it still is a dangerous career.
It didn't worry me at all. I think the only time I was worried is when my first day when I went down to the station and actually got indoctrinated, and then a priest came out and handed out Bibles and started reading. I'm like, holy mackerel! Did we get into war today?
Right. Yeah.
We didn't, but I just knew I needed to do what I needed to do, and I didn't worry about it.
Right. Was it a so you knew you wanted to go to college?
Hmm.
Tell me how that worked. But you didn't. Your family couldn't afford it, so you saw the military as a means. Is that correct? Tell me a little bit about that.
I did, and then I thought I'd join the military to be an MP, but it turns out I was too young to be an MP, and they didn't tell me that until the very last minute. And the recruiter said, "Hey, you're pretty smart. Do you like girls? Do you like fast cars? What about military intelligence?" I said, "Sure. Who doesn't like
Right.
girls?"
Yeah.
And I never had the girls or anything like that. And the fastest car the Army ever provided me was an Opel Kadett when I was overseas. But it was a pretty good experience, anyhow.
So, what does when you're trained as an 18-year-old going into the Army military intelligence? What's the training like? What do you have to do?
Well, I was actually 17
17. Yeah.
when I actually went in. So I didn't turn 18 till November, and I was already in the advanced individual training. I was taught and trained for the collection, analysis, and dissemination of intelligence data. So what does that mean? find out what you need to find out, figure it out, and get the information where it needs to go.
Did that suit you? Did that match up with you originally wanted to be an MP, but now you're in intelligence. Did that work for you?
It did. It was hard at first because I didn't know what I was doing, and I still had the images of James Bond in my mind. But
Is it anything like James Bond?
no,
I didn't think so.
no. It suited me well. I advanced very quickly. It turned out I was a pretty good leader of people and could make decisions and was conscientious and straightforward. So folks followed me, and it turned out to be a pretty good move.
What's the hardest part about being in military intelligence? I mean, we've interviewed several vets who are in military intelligence, and they ha 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 on the the oxymoron, but it really is. It's a very tough job. What's the most challenging thing about being in military intelligence?
I think sometimes when you're alone and things aren't going the way they're supposed to, and things could take a real bad turn,
Yeah,
and you could be killed.
yeah. So Vietnam is spooling down, and you're going into peacetime, but peacetime after Vietnam was not necessarily peaceful because we're engaged in several conflicts around the world. South America was not going well for us. And then we've got the communist, even though Nixon had visited USSR and had opened relations with China, that's still a pretty cold war, correct? Is that the milieu that you were into?
Yeah, for a long time I was assigned to the First Infantry Division. We had a brigade forward deployed just to stop the Russians. So I was deployed a couple of times overseas in the Cold War, and it didn't matter if we were at war or not. My mission was the same. Um, so it got pretty tense sometimes.
Were you in the military? And for a lot of people, many of your students who were born after the fall of communism, it's hard for them to. I mean, now we talk about Russia, but it's in different contexts. Were you afraid of the Russians or communists, or how does that work in military intelligence at that time in the mid to late 70s, all the way into the 80s?
As far as afraid of them individually, no.
Okay.
I didn't have a lot of respect for them. I knew what
Okay.
was going on behind the scenes. Um, I saw how they treated their people as well. It was just it was a difficult time. People don't understand it, and the freedoms that we have in this country, and even other countries, Western allies that we have. Um, that didn't come overnight, and there's a lot of people that died for that. A lot of people who sacrificed for that. So it was an interesting time.
What do you remember about the people who were behind the Iron Curtain or in communism? What was most striking? You were a kid from Chicago, and then you were halfway around the world witnessing a completely different form of government. What was the most stark thing to you that stood out in your mind?
The darkness of the buildings
Really?
and the
In
lack
what way?
of colors.
Yeah.
Uh, Things appeared really old. Um, just a lot of stuff like that. Here in the United States, you'll see houses that are multiple colors or buildings or whatever, but it was pretty dark and dreary.
Right. What did you think? Could you or did you predict, not you personally, but in military intelligence, could have you imagined in the 80s the fall of communism, that it would crumble like it did?
I always thought it would, but I didn't know when it would.
Why did you think that?
I just didn't think it's a sustainable model. How the money's going to run out somehow, some way, and that's really what happened. And if people get a taste of freedom and what it's like to be able to express your opinion or to do things or to pursue your goals, your ambitions, the United States didn't say you're going to do this. They said you want to do this, and it's okay. In the Soviet era, it's up to them to decide what your future path is going to be. Um, I just didn't see that as a sustainable long-term model. I really didn't.
Yeah. So when you were overseas, what did you appreciate most about America, or what did you miss most about the States?
The language.
Yeah.
It was nice to be able to speak English. Food was was, I was in the Army, so any food was better than what the Army was serving. But I don't know, miss baseball and football and things like that.
Yeah. So tell me about when you were over there. Do you have a favorite place that you were stationed or that you were over there? Favorite part that was not the States?
No,
No.
I didn't actually have one specific duty station when I was there. I was all over.
Okay. How did being your time in the military serve or inform what you're doing today?
It helped me significantly. It's helped me throughout all my jobs, but this job is probably the pinnacle of it because I learned not to complain what I don't have. I learned to get the mission done using resources I had or my brains, try to figure it out. I learned about survival. I learned about integrity. I learned about people. I learned about responsibility. And all those things are so important in my position as chancellor right now. If I'm not honest, I'll lose respect. People won't follow me. People won't do what they need to do. Um, if I complain that I don't have enough money to get things done, I'll never get anything done. And at the end of the day, you can always use more money. So we're pretty mission focused at the university. We want to put our students first, and I got a lot of that from the military, where I put my troops first, where I made sure that they're safe. We came back okay, and we did our job.
Is it? It's one thing being an individual in something like an army. It's another thing having troops. Did that keep you up at night? I mean, when now if you're leading troops, you're responsible for their safety, and you want to see them get back home. How did that factor in? Was that something that was difficult for you?
I don't think it was really difficult because we made sure when somebody was put in a difficult situation, they were trained, they were prepared for it, and they'd come back okay, and they were, and they did. Um, it's the same here at the institution. I don't want to put the CFO in charge of academics when the CFO is not trained in academics. So,
Yeah. Did you? What was the most important thing that the military taught you?
mission first,
Okay.
get the job done,
Okay.
and do what you got to do.
When you were when you were when you came back, how many years did you spend in the army?
I spent 3 years active,
Okay.
active duty, 1 year active reserves, and about a year and a half active reserves, and about a year and a half inactive reserves.
Okay.
And I got called back to duty when I was in college, and I was sent to Fort Meade for a short time.
Okay. When you came back, what you wanted to do with your life, had it changed?
It did because I was hurt pretty bad overseas. So I was no longer able to do things that I love, like play baseball and football and run and things. So physically, it provided me with a lot of challenges that I had never faced before. Um, when I went to school, we weren't wasn't well received because it was a liberal arts school. It's a good school, but they weren't pro-military at that time. So, and I certainly displayed all the signs of PTSD at the time, and got no help, and went to class drunk a lot, or some classes didn't even buy the books, and I struggled through a lot of that.
What did you go to college to study?
Well, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And I had multiple majors, from criminal justice to political science to human resources,
Right.
all over the place.
Right. You're just trying things, I imagine, right? Or trying.
Try not to flunk out.
Yeah. Did you coming back to the U.S. injured? That's a life-changing experience, obviously. How did your perspective change from when you went into the Army to coming back injured?
Well, the medical care wasn't very good,
Mm-hmm.
and I was still pretty bad off, and I could have stayed in longer just to get the medical stuff, get good surgeries and things, but it kind of changed my perception of the military a bit.
In what way?
Well, I was supposed to go. I was nominated to West Point Prep School. And it's a year-long program, and then when you're done with that, you go to West Point. And it just changed the way I looked at the military. And I thought, I'm really putting my neck on the line. Why can't I get good medical care and things like that?
So you came back. Was it fair to say bitter?
I would say that would be accurate.
Um, I've done stories. The media has covered people who came back bitter and never were able to overcome those things. You don't seem like that now.
No, I stopped the poor me party. I mean, I never really complained about it. I got hurt or whatever. Um, I got a job to do. I gotta finish, and I gotta do some things. I just didn't know how to do it at the time. I didn't.
Was it why was that? Was it a lack of direction? Was it support in the Army? What gave you that? I don't want to call it driftless, but how did that work?
Well, I was a non-commissioned officer in charge of security intelligence in the military intelligence battalion, and I had a lot of responsibility, and I was only 20 years old, and I had a lot of respect as well. So one day I was that, the next day I was nothing. And there was no transition time, there was no thought about it. I had more responsibility then than I had 30 or 40 years later in my life. So that was a hard time. Plus, I was hurt. I was angry about that and uh, disappointed about that as well. So it was just a hard transition into college, and then I didn't know what to do in college. I'd never been a great student to begin with. I was more interested in sports or girls or whatever. And college was a little harder. You had to at least buy the books, and you had to go to class.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't.
that be all the expectations, right?
I didn't master that for a while.
Right. Yeah.
But I went to school downtown, right off of Rush Street, which is a party street in Chicago, and fed the local economy.
Did you? So when you came back, you'd gone from this position of respect and authority to kind of a nobody. That has to be very hard, and you're younger too. How do you? You probably dealt with it the only way. So, what's the answer for the veterans coming back today?
Get help, reach out.
Okay.
That gives me a lot of passion right now. I know that I struggled for a long time in college and after college, and the people around me also paid a price as well, because sometimes I could be pretty blunt and bitter as well. So right now, what I want to do is reach out to those veterans that are coming out and say, "Hey, it's okay to be mad. It's okay to be upset, but let's go. Let's get you some help. What can we do to make your life better? We care." I don't think anybody cared at the time. I remember going on an interview with a corporation, and this lady said, "Why would I ever hire you? I just realized you were in the Army." And I said, "Well, Army was good and trained me, whatever." Well, no, we don't want. You chose to go in the Army. You weren't even drafted. Why? You
Wow.
don't have the judgment. And I kind of lit her up right there. And then, but that was a prevailing time in that area, so it was pretty hard. I'm very pleased that we're not like that to our veterans today. Um, but I want to make sure that if they come to MSU Billings, there's a place for them, and we'll help them succeed, however we can do.
Yeah. Did so you came back and how did you go, how did you get out of that cycle, jumping major to major, supporting the local economy, as you said? How did you break that? How did that happen?
It just came down to one day I said, "You know what, this isn't working for me." I had jobs, I didn't like the jobs. I said, "Okay, what are we good at? What can we do?" And I ended up going back to school and got a master's degree in accounting. Turns out I was pretty good at that, and did a lot of accounting outside of, I started an accounting practice and did quite well at that. And just built upon my successes and said, hey, the past is the past. We'll just deal with it. Am I okay if I don't ever play football again? Yeah. Am I okay if I don't play basketball again? Yeah, I can live with it.
Yeah.
So
What about, so you also had some time when you were a forensic accountant. You worked for the FBI, is that correct?
I work for Department of Justice.
Justice? Okay, DOJ. Did that mesh the two lives, your accounting life and your intelligence life? How does that work? I'm curious about that.
Well, that was right after 9/11, and I
Okay.
wanted to serve again. I obviously couldn't do the uniform bit, but I could do that. And I went and I investigated terrorist funds, followed the money, arson for profit, bank fraud, insurance fraud, all kinds of things like that. And you have to do a lot of analysis, and you have to pull a lot of things together, and you got to figure it out. And you're in a job by yourself an awful lot, so it worked out. It worked out rather well.
Did it kind of use? I have a feeling that blended a lot of your training in life together in a certain way, in a way that's probably different than what you're blending that together to today, right?
Yeah, an example was we get to subpoena a bunch of records, and it's in Arabic. Well, I don't read Arabic, and there aren't very many people around that do because it's really short, and there's a bigger case going on over there or over there. So I actually had to teach myself Arabic so I could read it, and I did. I wasn't very good at it, but I could understand it enough to do what I needed to do.
Hmm.
So
That necessity sometimes is the mother of invention, right?
yeah, just don't ask me to read anything right now.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Did you? So why you have a military background? You've got an accounting background. You've got a government background. Why get into higher ed? Tell me about your journey into higher education.
Well, it actually started when I was pursuing my master's degree.
Okay.
I did really well in the first course, which was cost accounting, and the instructor, Dr. Grover, thought I was doing really well, and he said, "Hey, how would you like to be a tutor? Tutors kids in accounting." I'm like, tutor? Me? I barely know what A plus B is. Um, and I did, and they paid for my tuition then, and they gave me a stipend as well. And it turned out I was a pretty good tutor. I could explain things in an easy to understand manner, which is what I did in the Army because I had to take some complicated stuff and make it understandable in short bites. And that opened up my eyes to possibly teaching, and the university asked me to teach a course, and I did, and I liked it. And I had to get a doctorate in order to be a full-time teacher. So I eventually did, but it took me a while to go back to school to do that. But I taught as an adjunct for a long time, and I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Why do you think you enjoy teaching?
I enjoy teaching because I've got the experience and the knowledge in the field. So I didn't learn it by books. I learned it the hard way. I understand accounting, I understand taxes, I understand all that stuff. Um, and it's just such a pleasure to work with someone that wants to learn and understand something and explain it to them in a way that they get it. And to me, when that light bulb goes off in them, I just it's really good for me. It's a great personal feeling.
Mm-hmm. So why go from classroom to administration? Why career?
Well, the answer to that is rather simple. When in a classroom, I could work with maybe you got a high performer once a semester, twice a semester, or whatever, and you really can take them to a higher level, and you can really change a student's life. But as an administrator, I can change thousands of kids' lives right now. And as a faculty, I can only change them one at a time. What do I mean? Lord, we lowered the cost of the housing by 20%. That's going to impact lots and lots of students. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was still an accounting professor, but as a chancellor, I can do that. So to me, I'm able to help more students in many different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How did you get? I mean, it's been many years removed. How did you get over being pissed off, or are you? I don't want to assume something.
Um, I think I'm over over it. Um, I do get flashbacks. To that, I'm not over it. Um, but I'm doing a lot of good right now, and I'm helping a lot of people, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So life's good.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking out of a bottle. I'm not hooked on all kinds of drugs. I'm not unemployed. I'm fully employed. I've got probably the best job you can ever have, and it's much better than being an editor.
I don't know about that, but we'll see about that. We can have conversations about that.
But it's just a great time, and it's a great place to be.
Do you think that you're serving as inspiration to those who are coming back and may have to reconcile part of what they did in uniform with where they're going now?
Well, I really kept quiet about a lot of my struggles and my disabilities throughout my career.
Hmm.
I've opened up more and more about it because if we can reach out to one veteran and say, hey, it's okay to be angry, hey, it's okay to be drunk, but let's get this under control, um, then I think I've served a purpose. I think I've reached a calling. So it's really good to be able to reach out to these young men and women and help them.
Hmm. What do you see that's different? Or is there I shouldn't assume there's a difference. Is there a difference between the veterans who are coming home today and when you came home?
I think there's a little bit of a difference from what I
Okay.
can tell. When I was a veteran, we all went underground.
Hmm.
You didn't let people know you were a veteran. And today, I think that there's more and more. At least if you just drive down the road, you see veteran license plates. And back in my day, you wouldn't do that. Um, so I think that there's more pride.
Was there I just want to clarify, was the reason that didn't happen, was that the lingering effects from Vietnam, or what was the reason for that, do you think? When you came home, you didn't let people know?
That was still Vietnam, and plus, Jimmy Carter approved a mission in Iran that went pretty bad, and it looked like our military was Keystone Cops, couldn't pull it off. It just fed into that negative image of the military.
What are you proud of your military time of year that you served?
I am.
And uh, what do you think changed the attitude of people? Why is that no longer the Keystone Cops image? Why is that no longer the prevailing sentiment?
I think it's a lot of things. Our culture's changed. 9/11 happened. People were able to rally around it, just like they did similarly to Pearl Harbor. Um, there's a lot more pride. Uh, it's an all volunteer military force where Vietnam was still the draft was going on. It's businesses that embrace veterans that give discounts to veterans, which still blows me away because when I got out, you definitely didn't get a discount being a veteran. Now they do that. It's good.
Yeah. Do you let's talk a little bit too about um, do you think that there's a greater understanding of PTSD now? And if so, are there better resources or resources to help?
Well, I think there is a better understanding. We used to call it, or they used to call it, shell shock, um, battle fatigue, and all kinds of other things. I think there's more studies on it now. I know the VA, when I go for medical care, they're more in tune with PTSD. They certainly weren't when I got out. Uh, I don't think they cared at that time. So there's a lot more. There's more knowledge about it. There's more information, and there's more resources. But there's more we can do.
Yeah. What do you think? What more needs to be done for our veterans, in your opinion, as someone who's been through the system and been through that?
I think we need to teach our active duty military about it before they get it. I
Hmm.
think instead of learning about PTSD after you have it, maybe if we learned about it before it happened, it would be easier for somebody to deal with once they get it. Maybe it would also remove any stigmas around it because in my day, if you had any kind of mental issue, it was a bad stigma because we were big, bad, tough Army sergeants. So I think earlier education would probably help a lot.
Yeah. One of the things that I want our listeners to know, Dr. Edelman, is that you have done, in my opinion, more for veterans coming back on the college campus than I've ever seen. And honestly, when you said you wanted to do that, I don't think I would hope that I didn't poo-poo it, but I thought, well, what can you do? And you've demonstrated by creating lounges, by actually locating VA services, by doing so much. Um, it's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on here because I think you have taught this community and you've taught the university how you care for your veterans, and I think that probably could have only come from a place of actually knowing what they go through, quite frankly. And so, first of all, I want to thank you for that. But second of all, what role did what you went through influence what you're doing today?
It still does. I'm in pain 24/7,
Okay.
365, and that's only because I was in the military. Uh, but every day I wake up and I hope I can change somebody's life. I hope I can reach to somebody. I hope I can set an example where, hey, if Edelman can do it, who was not known for academic brilliance in high school, anybody can do it. And I think that there's a place for anybody in our campus to succeed, whether it be from welding to nursing to biology to accounting, whatever, journalism. There's a lot of great faculty there and a lot of great adjuncts, including yourself. Thank you very much, by the way. So there's lots of opportunities for veterans on our campus, and you are welcome. You will not be disrespected like I was.
Mhm.
uh, you will be well received.
What's brought you the most joy in the things that you've done as it pertains to veterans?
I think getting a lounge for them, because it's something I never had. It's a place where they can get together and they can talk among themselves and they can bond, they can be supportive, they can be cohorts, um, they can they can overcome some of the challenges together. To me, the camaraderie that I had in the military, I've never been able to find outside of the military. So if we can reconstruct a little bit of that for them in a lounge, I think it goes a long way. So to me, that's a big deal for me. And it's a great lounge. It's located in best real estate on campus, and we also moved the Montana VA across the hall as well. So there's lots of synergy between our campus and the Montana VA. So I think that probably one of the best.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you tell returning veterans who step foot on the campus? What do you tell them as the chancellor and they're just maybe beginning their journey and you've reached the pinnacle of it? I mean,
Don't be afraid to ask. Tell us what's going on in your head. We can't mind read your mind. How can we help you succeed to achieve your goals and your dreams wherever you want to be? If you need any other kind of help, whether it be psychological help or physical help, physical therapy, whatever, we can help align those needs. We have a great veterans director who is a retired Air Force colonel. She's extremely passionate about veterans issues, but she's genuine. It's all from the heart. It's not made up or make believe. So you can succeed on our campus
mhm.
to become whatever you want to become.
Do you think that the culture, have you seen a culture change in the last couple of years?
As far as
The university at MSUB and how students are, veterans are treated?
well, I don't know how it was before my time, but I know where we had the veterans located before was pretty disrespectful to the veterans,
Mhm.
and it was in a location. It was through a closet, then through a dark room, and then it was another little closet. And to me, it was just really disrespectful. So we moved it out of there, um, and got them good space. And to me, I'm sending a message that you're welcome here.
Mhm.
Um, and we've turned into a Purple Heart University as well. I'm really proud of that. We've started a Salute chapter, which is a National Honor Society for veterans as well. So we've done an awful lot to work with the veterans and to let them know that they're welcome and they're wanted and they're very much appreciated.
Yeah. Did you, is there more to do with veterans? I mean, are there more plans that you have for veterans are at MSUB, or are you at the place that you wanted to be?
No, there's always more to do. There's a lot of veterans from eras gone by that or their families that need to go to college or get an opportunity for an education. There's more outreach. We're doing a lot of that right now, but there's still more that we can do, and we can do it. And I'd also like to see us also expand our ROTC program as well. So we help the military from the intake side as well.
Sure. What's the when you what has been the response from the students? Have you connected with some of the veterans, and what's been their response to this?
Well, they're kind of in awe. I'm kind of like a commanding general to them. So when I go and talk to them, you can see that they're very respectful, and I try to make it that I'm just a veteran like they are. But it's pretty cool. Last week, Vice President Daines or Vice President Pence, excuse me, was in town, and they were looking for some veterans to go to an event, and I talked to a couple and hooked them up, and they went over there, and they enjoyed the opportunity to see the Vice President, regardless of the political
Sure.
outcome or party affiliation. But so there's just a lot of different things, and working with them and saying, hey, if I could do this, you could do this. Here's what I had to overcome, and here's the benefits that you have, and they have a lot of benefits they can take advantage of too, depending upon their needs.
Yeah. What does the also when you came back from your service? I'm guessing you enrolled in college? Were you older than your classmates?
I was older than my classmates.
And I'm guessing that happens today still. But is MSUB uniquely suited because a lot of people, or a lot of the students, not all of them, but many of them, have come back or are coming back? Does that seem to dovetail well that they're not as much of an anomaly? I know in my undergrad, I went to a liberal arts college. If I would have had someone in their 20s, we would have regarded them as old.
Yep.
Does that is MSUB uniquely situated for those types of students?
We are, because 40% of our students are non-traditional or adult learners, which is great because they're either come back for a different career path, or they're trying to finish their degree, they've got families or whatever the case may be, so they fit in. Where I went to school, it was a lot of rich kids as well, and it was all traditional students, or I didn't know any non-traditional students at all, actually. Um, and I was the oldest because I was an old man at 20 compared to them. And I'd always, for me, it made it a little bit harder because my birthday's in November. So I was always the youngest kid in the class all through school up until college. So they're welcome here at MSUB.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see? Is there any particular success story that sticks with you in your time here with veterans?
Well, we've worked with a couple of them that were about to drop out, but they ended up staying in. We've got them some more resources. We got them some counseling as well. Those are success stories to me. We've also had some that got called back to active duty, and we're working with them so they can continue their studies online. So those are big successes for me as well.
Right. What are the biggest hurdles for students who are veterans coming back? What do you probably know that a lot of people who've spent their entire career in academia don't know?
It's hard sitting back in a classroom. It's hard looking at somebody who has a PhD and probably went all the way through school from high school and never did anything outside of academics, to be talking about life to me, who as a veteran has done a lot of stuff that is unimaginable. So there was a lot of that lack of respect. But we hire some really good faculty, and I like to hire faculty with real world experience as well, because they're better instructors. Even though we do have some that don't have the real world experience, they've only been in the classroom, but they're still good. They're still good instructors.
Mm-hmm. What's the most important thing the military taught you?
Don't give up.
Yeah, yeah. When you look back at it, would you tell Would you tell students, if you had an ROTC program at MSUB, would you recommend students go into it?
We do have an ROTC program
I
at
apologize, I didn't know that.
MSUB. I do recommend students go into it, but it's up to the student. There's some folks that the military just wouldn't be right for, and then there's other folks that it's a really good fit. So it all depends on the individual.
Was your time in the military a good thing for you?
I think it was.
Yeah. What do you hope at the end of it, when your family and friends are gathered around at the end of your life, what do you think they're going to say about what the military taught you?
Are you already planning my funeral?
No, I'm not. I'm not. No, but I will. I always say I am in the obituary writing business, so it could. I guess it could be helpful. But I'm not planning anything. No.
I just said I was dedicated, loyal, and honest.
Okay.
Committed to help people.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for what you do for veterans, because one of the reasons we do this is because I think by sharing stories, we help people understand what it was really like. People like me who didn't serve and don't know. So I want to thank you for sharing your story. I want to thank you for what you do for veterans. I want to thank you for what you do for this community. And I want to thank you for sitting down with me today, too.
Thank you, Daryl, for all you do as well.
You bet. This has been Daryl Ehrlich and Chancellor Dan Edelman on Stories of Honor. Thanks for tuning in.